We're looking at the Indian Railways today. We're going to unpack exactly why this giant urgently needs a 12 lakh crore modernization, where that astronomical amount of money is actually going, and the immense challenges standing in its way. To make sense of a plan this massive, we've broken it down into these 6 core sections. We'll start with the revenue paradox, then look at the master plan itself, followed by upgrading tracks and power, next-gen trains and stations, the Kavach safety shield, and wrap up with the modernization roadblocks. All right, Section 1, the Railway Revenue Paradox. Let's look at why exactly this giant is bleeding cash. Get this number, 98.32%. That was the operating ratio in financial year 25. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, the Indian Railways operates with a dual mandate. Its primary job isn't to maximize profit, it's to provide accessible transport to every corner of the nation. Because passenger tickets are heavily subsidized, we get this severe financial reality. In simple terms, for every 100 rupees the railways earned, they had to spend 98 rupees and 32 paise just to keep the lights on and the trains running. That leaves a microscopic 1.68 rupees of profit. I mean, when your margins are that razor thin, you have virtually nothing left over for developing new infrastructure or expanding the network. In this stat right here brilliantly illustrates the root cause of that terrible operating ratio. As the railway minister pointed out, if the actual cost of providing a passenger journey is 100 rupees, the railways only recover about 55 rupees from the ticket price. They're taking a 45 rupee loss on almost every single passenger journey. So how does an organization survive that kind of constant hemorrhage? Well, they cross-subsidize. To cover the huge hole left by passenger travel, they artificially hike up their freight rates, charging businesses much higher premiums to transport goods like coal, minerals, and cement. But as you know, economics always catches up. Because of those artificially high freight rates, businesses naturally started looking for cheaper alternatives, shifting their cargo to trucks and highways. Just look at how the market share flipped. Back in 1950, railways dominated with an 85% share of total freight transport. Today, it's plummeted to just 27%, while roads and other modes have ballooned to 73%. Add in the fact that over a recent 22-year period, rail track length only grew at about 1.2% per year, while the highway network just exploded, and you're left with a rail network that is incredibly congested. Almost half the routes are running at over 100% capacity, and they're losing their most profitable customers. Which brings us to Section 2, the 12 lakh crore master plan, part of the National Rail Plan 2030. To fix this suffocating network and win back that freight share, the government announced a breathtaking 10 to 12 Lakh Crore investment roadmap leading up to 2029. To avoid getting lost in those massive numbers, let's chunk this rescue mission into 5 clear modernization pillars: upgrading tracks and corridors, 100% electrification, next-gen wagons and coaches, world-class stations, and advanced safety systems. Let's start with the actual physical foundations of the network. Moving right into Section 3, upgrading tracks and power, getting those stronger rails and greener energy. Because look, you simply cannot run faster, heavier trains on century-old foundations. There is a stark contrast in capacity right now. A standard Indian freight train can carry a load of about 61 to 71 tons. Meanwhile, in China, that number's over 100 tons. So to match these global standards and eventually run these massive, heavy-haul, 13,000-ton train formations, India is pouring about 1 lakh crore into laying new tracks, replacing old ones, and expanding dedicated freight corridors. We're talking about the massive eastern and western DFCs and a newly announced one connecting West Bengal to Gujarat. It's all about separating the slow freight trains from the fast passenger trains, so both can actually operate efficiently. Now, on the power side, the progress is actually phenomenal. An impressive 99.2% of the Indian railway network is already electrified. That's an electrification rate that aggressively beats out highly developed nations like the UK, France, and Japan. The ultimate goal here is both environmental and economic efficiency, shifting completely away from diesel and aiming to be the world's first major net-zero carbon rail network by 2030, powered increasingly by renewable energy. Section 4, Next-Gen Trains and Stations. Welcome to the Vande Bharat and Amrit Bharat era. Modern tracks and green energy mean absolutely nothing without modern rolling stock and infrastructure for the actual passengers, right? And here, the private sector is stepping up massively to replace the outdated legacy passenger coaches. Titagarh and BHL have inked a colossal 24,000 crore deal to manufacture 80 Vande Bharat train sets. Jupiter Wagons is throwing down 2,500 crore in a joint venture to produce 1 lakh wheel sets annually. And what's really fascinating here is the recent policy reform. Historically, all train designs were strictly dictated by a government body, but now the government is allowing private companies and even oil firms to design their own specialized freight wagons for things like petrochemicals or automobiles, which is sparking massive innovation across the sector. Meanwhile, the physical stations are getting a desperate facelift. Under the Vande Bharat station scheme, 24,000 crores is being deployed to drag 1,337 outdated, congested stations straight into the 21st century. The vision is to mirror the passenger amenities you'd expect in Switzerland or Japan. We're talking cleaner spaces, proper waiting rooms, seamless Wi-Fi, and total digital integration with the new Rail One super app for live tracking and bookings. Section 5, the Kavach Safety Shield, automating accident prevention. Because none of this beautiful new infrastructure matters without securing the network. Safety is our fifth and most vital pillar, which, ironically enough, received the highest budget allocation in FY27 at an incredible 1.2 Lakh Crore. With an aging signaling system, human error can be absolutely catastrophic. So this massive safety overhaul relies heavily on Kavach, which literally translates to armor. It's an indigenous automatic train protection system. It basically uses AI to constantly monitor train speeds, signal status, and the distance between trains. If a driver misses a red signal, or if two trains somehow end up on the same track, Kavach overrides the manual controls and automatically applies the brakes to prevent a collision. Currently, this lifesaver is implemented across roughly 2,200 kilometers of the network, and they have aggressive plans to scale it. From a business perspective, the rollout of Kavach is fascinating to watch. The technology is so highly regulated that securing strict government design approval acts as a massive entry barrier. And because of this moat, only a handful of approved players even exist. Take Kernix Microsystems, for example. Driven by the Kavach mandate, their revenue from the segment is exploding, from just 18 crore in FY21 to a projected 430 crore in FY26. That is a 24 times revenue multiplier in just 5 years. It really highlights the sheer financial scale of this safety rollout. Finally, Section 6, the modernization roadblocks. What actually threatens this 12 lakh crore vision? Because look, the master plan is solid, and the money is definitely flowing, but replacing the engine of a plane while it's mid-flight is never easy. The first major complication brings us right back to our safety shield, Kavach. While it's a great indigenous technology, it has strict technical limits. Currently, Kavach can only handle train speeds up to 160 kilometers per hour. That's totally fine for conventional trains, but it's an absolute deal-breaker for the upcoming high-speed bullet trains, like the Shinkansen project being developed with Japan. In fact, Japanese delegates have raised severe concerns regarding India's safety norms and the limitations of this tech, and that's actively causing delays and diplomatic friction in the high-speed rail rollout. And that bullet train dilemma exposes a massive foundational mismatch. Standard Indian railway tracks are built on a broad gauge, which is 1.67 meters wide. But the global standard for high-speed rail and bullet trains is a narrower 1.43 meters. You literally cannot run a bullet train on India's current legacy tracks. So achieving true high-speed rail isn't just a simple upgrade. It requires an unimaginably expensive, ground-up rebuilding exercise to lay entirely new, specialized tracks across the country. And then there's a highly concerning corporate trend threatening the whole execution of the master plan. Because the Indian Railways is essentially a monopoly buyer, suppliers face massive concentration risk and notoriously long payment cycles. So, to protect themselves, the very manufacturers the government is relying upon to build this future are actively diversifying away from the railway sector. Titagar is moving into shipbuilding, Jupiter Wagons is pivoting toward EVs and battery storage, and Tex McCordo is expanding into defense. This presents a massive, glaring execution risk for the government's ambitious timelines. The capital is approved, the designs are ready, but if the key executing companies are busy pivoting their production lines toward electric vehicles and defense contracts, who is actually going to build out this 12 lakh crore modernization? It's a huge supply chain bottleneck just waiting to happen. Ultimately, the vision to transform the Indian railways from a congested, heavily subsidized giant into a net-zero, high-speed logistical powerhouse is phenomenal. It really is. But execution is everything. Overcoming legacy track gauges, technological speed limits, and corporate diversification will be the true test of this master plan. So I leave you with this to consider. With 12 lakh crore in motion, can India truly achieve, and more importantly maintain, a European or Japanese-level railway infrastructure in the coming decade? Let that sink in. Thanks for diving into this